Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. As a child, we were endlessly curious. Although our parents appreciated that, after a while, even they may have tired of our questions like, why is the sky blue? Alas, as we grow up, we tend to lose some of our curiosity, replacing a sense of wonder with shrugged shoulders. Of course, curiosity in adulthood enlivens a life and may boost our professional as well as our personal life. But how can we reinvigorate our sense of curiosity? It's all well and good to urge, be on the lookout for things to be curious about, but my clients have found it helpful when I've supplemented that with examples. Well, here are some things that I'm curious about, and for each, solutions that I ponder. I offer them in hopes not just of encouraging your curiosity about those things, but evoking other things that you're curious about. And because I'm going to be writing this in psychology today, I'm going to start with what I'm most curious about within psychology. What is at the root of mental illness? Anxiety, depression, autism, schizophrenia. What underpins other human characteristics? Altruism, intelligence, impulse control. Of course, environment matters, but the root may well lie in places along the chain from gene to protein to cell to circuit. But where in that chain? I wonder if we might need to be no more granular than the circuit level. Just as we don't need to know how a light bulb works to know it needs replacing, it may be that understanding what circuits govern what behavior can be a faster route to improving humankind's mental health. A career implication? If you or someone you care about is math-oriented, they could do worse than to pursue a career in behavioral genomics. Next, some ideas I've derived from my work as a career counselor. What will happen when there aren't enough good jobs to go around? Sure, there are plenty of low-pay, mind-numbing gigs, but most people wouldn't be content with a life as a janitor or burger flipper, let alone as an assembly line worker in a clanging factory. I'm wondering if the shortage of well-paying jobs will make people become less materialistic, with tax dollars providing an ever more generous safety net. But even if good jobs were available, I'm wondering whether society's mind molders, that is, the schools, the colleges, and the media, should encourage the public to replace excess materialism with a focus on what's more important: contribution, relationships, and creative outlet. A more dramatic solution to the lack of good jobs would be to create an entrepreneurship curriculum from kindergarten through graduate school. Entrepreneurs create good jobs without eating our seed corn. That is, tax dollars that disproportionately come from job creators. In hiring, why would employers use the resume as the core screening tool? It's clear, per a review of the literature that was reported in Inc. magazine, that many applicants, I think that article said 85%, hard for me to believe, many applicants at least, applicants' resumes present an inflated, sometimes downright dishonest picture of who they are. Because employers use resumes not just as a recitation of work history, but as a sample of the candidate's ability to write, to think, and to organize, when applicants use a hired gun to write their resume, employers can't know if they're evaluating the candidate or the resume writer. I'm wondering why more employers don't give primacy to an online test of candidates' ability to do the job's key tasks. To deter candidates from using a hired gun, the candidates would be informed that if selected for interview, they would take a parallel test under proctored conditions. Why do many employees work the least they can get away with? A UK study found that the average office worker is actually working for only 2 hours and 23 minutes a day. Can such employees feel good about that? Do they, especially the half that work fewer than 2 hours and 23 minutes, not worry that it endangers their employment, let alone their advancement? Do they not feel at least a little sleazy about getting paid for 8 hours but working only 2 hours and 23 minutes? Or do they fail to realize that life's meaning, at least in part, should derive from being productive? To encourage such thinking, I wonder if schools should reallocate a little of the time that they spend on less important things. What come to mind? Trigonometry, the War of the Roses, and the subtleties in Beowulf. Now some things I'm curious about regarding relationships. Why has the institution of marriage, with its call for lifetime commitment in sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer, persisted despite half of marriages ending in divorce, often bitter and expensive? And knowing that you're rather permanently hitched can encourage complacency, treating your partner worse than you otherwise would. Especially today, people need to think 3 times before signing on the dotted line for such a permanent legal and emotional entanglement. I wonder if it would help to have more people sign up for a 1, 5, or 10-year renewable marriage contract. That would provide a measure of stability that helps relationships in parenthood without the monumentality of a lifetime commitment. Why do we prioritize family over friends? After all, we're thrust into family by chance, friendship by choice. And the notion that you can always count on family is often untrue. Haven't you often heard of people who are angry at or estranged from family members? Should we not do more to legitimate solohood, as fellow Psychology Today blogger Bella DePaulo does? And now, more broadly, there is much about humankind that evokes curiosity. Why do we still have wars? Are leaders so cruel as to subject countless people to mayhem and death, usually for mere territory or religious fealty? The horrors of war, so long described by the schools, the colleges, the news, and the entertainment media, hasn't seemed to deter at least some of our leaders. And today's nuclear arsenal dwarfs that even of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then there are the highly compact and thus less trackable suitcase nukes and bioweapons. All it would take for a sci-fi-like dystopian nightmare would be for a few private planes to release an airborne, highly communicable pathogen over New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and so on. I wonder why that hasn't happened already. Ernest Ray Mattoon's PhD dissertation reviewed 2,000 years of world history to conclude that war was less likely when the major powers were armed to the teeth. Rivals were afraid to declare war. Could it be that peace activists should, rather than urging the laying down of arms, urging keeping them raised, but work to improve negotiators' communication skills and other skills perhaps, so those arms don't get used? Why do many people spend so much more to get a product that's not better? For example, an average diamond at $5,000 a carat compared with a cubic zirconium which has no flaws at $1 a carat. Or the more service-requiring and breakdown-prone Mercedes or Beamer rather than the more reliable Toyota or Honda. Ironically, I wonder if people worth caring about may think less of the person who, for example, wears a Rolex, average price $10,000, rather than one of the many equally accurate $20 Casios. And I wonder how many people spend their lives in lucrative but unrewarding careers so they can buy that silliness. It would seem that status can be the enemy of contentment. Can we not come up with a better system for electing our leaders? Are Donald Trump and Joe Biden really the best that America has to offer? Our current system requires a non-stop, permanent press the powerful's flesh campaign, which deters the best people from running. I wonder about the pros and cons of campaigns that would be just 2 weeks long and publicly funded, with candidates' bios, voting records, and key proposals aggregated by a neutral body such as procon.org, intelligencesquaredus.org, or Consumer Reports, and publicized by the media. I wonder why education is still taught much as it was ages ago. Lecture, discussion, individual and group projects. Why are we not making more use of Dream Team taught, highly interactive, individualized online lessons? I've written about this in something called Ultra Courses. You can Google that. Artificial intelligence can even detect kids' unspoken happiness, so teachers can respond. Why have U.S. politicians so resisted nuclear energy, despite physicists long having found that physics delimitations preclude solar and wind from being more than a small part of the clean energy solution? Of course, Fukushima, Chernobyl, and 3 Mile Island persist in our consciousness, but today, most of the world uses more nuclear and safely. Yes, researchers should be encouraged to develop ever safer nuclear with better waste disposal. But if the use of fossil fuels is so dangerous to the planet, should we be so resistant to nuclear energy, which can provide a virtually unlimited supply of clean energy? Fortunately, after 48 years, the Democrats are finally endorsing nuclear energy. Why are we legalizing marijuana, a second alcohol, when jurisdictions in which it has been legalized has found a major increase in vehicle accidents, with drivers under the influence of marijuana, and with the attendant pain, suffering, and death? And the science is now ambiguous, and you can Google Google Psychology Today, Marty Nemko, marijuana, recreational, and you'll see a review of the literature. And the science is now unambiguous that marijuana increases the risk of everything from memory loss to IQ loss, to depression, social anxiety, and cardiovascular and lung disease. And anecdotally, we all know people whose marijuana use seems to cause a decrease in motivation. With the healthcare system already overtaxed before COVID and before marijuana legalization, I'm wondering why that's on government's priority list, that is legalization. And finally, turning to nature. I wonder how the world actually began. The Big Bang and biblical explanations are too broad brush for me. What in God's name created the first quark? What were the first steps from quark to our amazing planet Earth? On that issue, I have no idea. But curiosity doesn't necessarily require having a hypothesis for everything. So, what questions and hypothesized solutions, perhaps, do you have? Should you walk the earth looking for more things to be curious about and to muse on possible solutions? After all, that's how big discoveries occur. But even if you don't come up with anything more useful than stuff to chat about with friends, a renewed sense of curiosity will enliven your life and maybe replace some of the malaise that many people feel with a sense of wonder. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.